first 8 chapters of Genesis have shown a remarkable sequence of time-related events. They not only reveal the exact number of years from the creation week to the flood, but also determine the correct number of days of the flood year. God shows us by the day count of the flood year that his system of recording time is open to man's understanding. This fact should cause one to wonder and question why the being who created all things would call out very specific time elements if they were not calendrically verifiable. When placing this fact in the proper perspective, there can be no greater proof of God's invincibility than the verifiable record he left for modern man in the Bible, a book covering more than 6,000 years of man's history. The first video has shown the movement of the celestial bodies, God's giant clock in the sky, which records how time is authenticated by his placing them in their orbits as they are found today. It should be emphasized that God, by declaring the passage of time in days, months, and years, has placed before mankind a mathematical progression of time, proving that he created the universe and also time, by which he has proven to be the great creating God. Before continuing to track time from the flood to Abram's departure for the promised land, 2 episodes must be addressed. The first is Noah's experience of making and drinking wine. To understand what happened, it is necessary to read the article, "Why Was Canaan Cursed for What Ham Did?" The second scenario of the Tower of Babel is also important to review because it marks man's rebellion from God's purpose. When men decided to congregate in one area, it was contrary to God's instructions to spread out and fill the earth. Micah 4:4. But everyone shall sit under his vine and under his fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. For the mouth of the Lord of hosts has spoken. The building of the tower kept the people united with a fixed goal. Ask yourself, what was the importance of detailing the building of the tower with kiln-dried bricks and asphalt for mortar? It was because these people lived in a plain with no ready supply of stone for building. Their ingenuity was shown by how they solved this problem. This was coupled with their fanatical determination to build a tower tall enough to reach into heaven. By design, this project was meant to be all-consuming, occupying the total attention of the builders and the community that supported them. It could always be built larger and higher, a guarantee of full employment and distraction that served as a visual sign to unite the people and a place of protection from another all-consuming flood. This was a perfect way for the leadership to maintain control of the people. The reality was that everyone was working for the state. Genesis 11:6. And the Lord said, Indeed, the people are one, and they all have one language, and this is what they begin to do. Now, nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. The word nothing is a combination word, number 3808 and number 3605, together denoting a totality, in this case, an unlimited knowledge of the physical. This statement shows that man, with a combined effort, can come to totally understand and have the capacity to manipulate what makes up the physical world he lives in. Here, God points out that he has designed man in a unique way so that everything in this physical creation can be understood by him. God must now put an impediment to forestall man from coming to that point of no return, his own destruction. Matthew 24:22. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. Again, Christ was pointing to the same end that God was forestalling at the tower, preventing the annihilation of man, and only because of the faithful ones. It's clear that when God confused the language, he postponed what is seen today, the proliferation of knowledge around the world through the language of mathematics and physics, aided by the event of the computer, which has overcome the impediment of all the various languages. A division of languages occurred around the time of the birth of Peleg as a descendant of Shem, about the year 2285 BC or 1762 AM. Genesis 10:25, to Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided. And his brother's name was Joktan. This occurred about 100 years after the flood. The incident at the Tower of Babel was followed by a catalog of Shem's offspring. Genesis 11:10, this is the genealogy of Shem. Shem was 100 years old, and he begot Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. After he begot Arphaxad, Shem lived 500 years. The following chart covers the number of years from the flood to the birth of Terah. Shem begot Arphaxad after the floods, Genesis 11:10, 2 years. Arphaxad begot Selah, Genesis 11:12, 35 years. Selah begot Eber, Genesis 11:14, 30 years. Eber begot Peleg, Genesis 11:16, 34 years. Peleg begot Ru, Genesis 11:18, 30 years. Ru begot Serug, Genesis 11:20, 32 years. Ru begot Serug, Genesis 11:20, 32 years. Serug begot Nahor. Genesis 11:25, 30 years. Nahor begot Terah. Genesis 11:24, 29 years. This total is 222 years. Abraham's father Terah died at age 205. Genesis 11:32. At Terah's death, Abraham was 75, meaning that Terah was 130 years old at Abraham's birth. Add that to 222, make a total of 352 years from the flood to Abraham's birth. 352 plus 75, his age, equals 427 years from the flood until he left for the promised land. Genesis 12:4. Some math is required to pinpoint the year that Abraham left Haran for the promised land. It should be noted that when dealing in BC years, as you come forward toward the AD designation, you must subtract, but in AM years, addition is required. Keeping this in mind, the flood year was 2386 BC, or 1661 AM. Subtract the 427 years from 2386 BC to find the BC year 1959. The AM year is determined by adding 427 to 1661, resulting in the AM year of 2088. Remember, the count began after the flood. Abraham left at the beginning of 1958 BC, or 2089 AM. Keep in mind these two BC and AM years as we go forward in this timeline to Israel's exodus from Egypt.